G'day, the 2026 census is almost here. Census night is Tuesday the 11th of August. Most of the form is straightforward, but there is one question that a lot of Australians are thinking very hard about this year, and it's the religion question. It's optional. You don't have to answer it, but I'm here to encourage you, especially if you have a connection to Christianity, to take a moment and answer it thoughtfully. Because the numbers that come out of this shape how the government sees us as a country and what we value. The question is simply, what is the person's religion? You'll see a list of the most common responses from last time. That list includes no religion, Catholic, Anglican, Uniting Church, Presbyterian and Reformed, Greek Orthodox, Baptist, and a few other major groups. There's also an other, please specify box where you can write something in it. Here's the practical advice. If you identify with one of the Christian denominations that are listed, tick that box. If your denomination isn't on the list, or if you simply identify as a Christian without a strong denominational tie, tick other and write Christian. That's it, clear and simple. The Australian Bureau of Statistics itself says religious affiliation is about the religion a person nominates an association with. It does not have to mean that you go to church every Sunday, or that you tick every theological box, or that you never have doubts. Affiliation can include cultural connection, family heritage, and the values you still hold. When large numbers of Christian Australians mark Christian, either through a denomination or by writing Christian, it tells the government, planners and policy makers that a significant part of the population still sees itself as connected to their tradition. That data influences decisions about schools, aged care, chaplaincy in hospitals and prisons, public holidays, and the broader cultural landscape. If the number of people identifying as Christians keeps falling on paper, the assumption grows that Christian heritage no longer matters to Australians. I don't think that's true for most Australians, and the only way the government knows otherwise is if people say so on the census. I especially want to speak to people who might be hesitating. Maybe you haven't been to church in years. Maybe you consider yourself an atheist or an agnostic in the strict sense. Maybe you roll your eyes at organised religion. That's fine. You're still allowed to answer honestly about your cultural identity. Think about that for a second. Do you celebrate Christmas? Not just the presents and the food, but the whole season, the carols, the nativity stories, the idea of peace and goodwill? Do you mark Easter, even if it's about family and long weekends? Do you value the freedoms we take for granted in this country? Freedom of speech, conscience, equality before the law, care for the vulnerable, freedoms that grew out of a Christian understanding of the dignity of every person. Australia's legal system, its democratic instincts, its emphasis on a fair go, its calendar of public holidays, these didn't appear out of thin air. They were shaped over generations by Christians' ethics and the people who lived by them. You don't have to be a theologian to recognise that. And you don't have to pretend to be more religious than you are. If you look around and think, I like living in a society that still has Christian inheritance, and I'd rather that didn't disappear, then writing Christian on the census is a legitimate way of saying so. You're not lying. You're naming the culture and the values you still identify with and want to see protected. Plenty of Australians are cultural Christians in exactly that way. They're not necessarily in the pews, but they still feel something important would be lost if that tradition faded from public life. The census is one of the few moments where the quiet majority can be counted. So when the form arrives online or on paper, online, take 30 seconds on that religious question. Denomination listed, then tick it. Not listed or just Christian in broader sense, tick other and write Christian. Do it for the sake of accurate data. Do it because the government needs to know that many Australians still love and want to protect the Christian foundations and culture that have shaped this country. Do it even if you're not particularly religious in practice, but because culture and value matters to you. The census is a snapshot. Let's make the snapshot reflect reality. including the quiet cultural attachment that still runs deep in a lot of Australian homes. Thanks for listening. Fill out the form, answer the question honestly, and look after each other. See you next time. Cheers.